Right now, somewhere in the world, a tiny heartbeat is beginning, no bigger than a grain of rice, yet carrying the blueprint of an entire human life. In just 9 months, one single cell transforms into a breathing, moving, living baby. But what really happens inside the womb month by month, the truth is far more incredible than most people realize. Inside the womb, the greatest transformation in human life begins. From a microscopic cell to a fully formed baby, every month brings extraordinary changes that shape the future of a new human being. Tiny organs begin to form, the heart starts beating, the brain rapidly develops, and even emotions and movements slowly appear before birth. This journey is not just biology, it's one of nature's most powerful creations. In this speech, you'll discover how a baby grows month by month inside the womb, the hidden stages of development, and the incredible science behind pregnancy that most people never truly understand until now. Everything begins with a single microscopic moment. When the sperm successfully meets the egg, fertilization takes place, creating one tiny cell known as a zygote. This single cell carries the complete genetic blueprint of a new human life, including eye color, hair type, height potential, and countless biological traits. Within hours, the zygote begins dividing rapidly into multiple cells while traveling through the fallopian tube toward the uterus. Even at this earliest stage, the body is already following an incredibly precise biological program. After several days of continuous cell division, the growing cluster of cells becomes a blastocyst. This tiny structure contains the inner cells that will eventually develop into the baby, while the outer layer prepares to form the placenta, the life support system that will provide oxygen and nutrients throughout pregnancy. Once the blastocyst reaches the uterus, it attaches itself to the uterine wall in a process called implantation. This moment is critical because it officially allows the pregnancy to continue developing. As implantation occurs, the body begins producing hormones that support the baby's growth and prevent the uterine lining from shedding. The earliest foundations of the brain, spinal cord, and nervous system start forming surprisingly quickly. Tiny cells organize themselves with incredible precision, creating the first structures that will later become major organs and body systems. During these early days, although the embryo is smaller than a grain of rice, the speed of development happening inside the womb is one of the most extraordinary biological processes in human existence. As development continues, one of the earliest and most vital milestones inside the womb is the formation of the heart and the beginning of its rhythmic activity. Around the third to fourth week after fertilization, a simple tube-like structure starts shaping itself within the developing embryo. This structure is the early foundation of the heart, and even before it fully forms into chambers, it begins to contract and pulse in a coordinated rhythm. This is the first sign that the embryo is transitioning into a living system with circulating support. At this stage, the cardiovascular system begins to take shape with astonishing speed. Blood vessels start forming across the tiny body, creating pathways that will eventually carry oxygen and nutrients. The primitive heart tube begins to fold and divide, slowly transforming into a more complex structure with separate chambers. Each beat pushes early blood cells through these developing vessels, ensuring that growth continues in an organized and controlled way. The heartbeat is not just a physical event, it represents the activation of life support inside the womb. Oxygen and nutrients from the mother begin to pass through the developing placenta, working in harmony with the growing circulatory system. Even though the heart is still in its simplest form, it already follows a consistent rhythm that will continue to strengthen over time. As the heartbeat becomes more stable, it sets the foundation for every other organ system to develop properly. The steady circulation supports rapid growth, allowing tissues to form, organs to differentiate, and the embryo to evolve into a more complex structure with each passing day inside the womb. As the early structure of the body stabilizes, one of the most remarkable stages begins inside the womb: the rapid development of the brain and nervous system. This process starts very early, almost immediately after implantation, when a group of cells begins transforming into the neural tube. This tube later becomes the brain, spinal cord, and the entire central nervous system, which will control every function of the human body after birth. In the initial weeks, this neural tube forms and closes, creating the foundation for the brain's structure. From here, brain cells called neurons begin to multiply at an astonishing rate. These neurons are the building blocks of thought, memory, emotion, and movement. Even before the baby can move or react, billions of neural connections start forming inside the developing brain. This early activity is not random. It follows a highly organized pattern that determines how the brain will function throughout life. As weeks progress, different parts of the brain begin to specialize. The forebrain starts developing areas responsible for thinking and decision-making, while the midbrain manages sensory processing, and the hindbrain controls basic life functions such as breathing and heart rate regulation. Although the baby is still extremely small, the brain is already laying down the foundation for all future learning and behavior. The spinal cord extends from the brain and begins connecting nerves throughout the tiny body. These nerve pathways allow signals to travel between the brain and developing organs, creating the earliest form of communication within the body. Even reflexes begin to appear as the nervous system strengthens. By the end of this stage, the brain is one of the fastest growing organs, forming thousands of new connections every second. This rapid development ensures that by the time the baby is ready for birth, the basic structure of intelligence, awareness, and bodily control is already established and continuously evolving inside the womb. After the early formation of the heart and brain, the next powerful stage inside the womb is the development of all major organs, a process known as organogenesis. This stage is extremely critical because it lays down the complete framework of the human body. Every organ begins forming from three primary layers of cells, each layer responsible for creating specific systems that will function after birth. The inner layer gradually develops into organs such as the lungs, liver, stomach, and intestines. The middle layer forms structures like the heart, muscles, bones, kidneys, and reproductive organs. The outer layer develops into the skin, nervous system, and parts of the eyes and ears. Each layer follows a precise genetic instruction, ensuring that every part of the body develops in the correct place and order. During this stage, the lungs begin as small branching structures that will later allow breathing. The digestive system starts as a simple tube that slowly divides into specialized sections for processing food. The liver begins forming early and plays a key role even before birth in producing blood cells and supporting metabolism. The kidneys start developing filtration units that will eventually manage waste in the body after birth. At the same time, the skeletal system begins as soft cartilage that will later harden into bones. Tiny limb buds appear and slowly extend into arms and legs, while fingers and toes begin to take shape. Even facial features such as eyes, nose, and ears start forming with remarkable precision. The skin remains thin and transparent at this stage, allowing early visibility of developing blood vessels underneath. The placenta continues to act as a vital connection between the mother and the baby, supplying oxygen, nutrients, and removing waste products. This support system ensures that all organs receive what they need for proper development. Meanwhile, the body begins practicing early functions such as swallowing amniotic fluid, which helps develop the digestive system, and small muscle movements that strengthen coordination. Every organ develops in a carefully timed sequence, and even a slight disruption can affect the entire system. This stage reflects one of the most complex and precisely controlled processes in human biology, where a fully structured body is gradually built from a simple cluster of cells inside the womb. As development continues inside the womb, one of the most fascinating stages begins when the baby starts to move. These early movements are not random. They are the result of a rapidly developing nervous system, growing muscles, and strengthening connections between the brain and body. Even though the mother may not feel it at first, the baby begins subtle motions that mark a major milestone in growth. At around the early second trimester, small muscle contractions begin to appear. The arms and legs, which were once tiny buds, now start extending and bending. These movements are often spontaneous, meaning they are not yet controlled by conscious thought but are driven by developing nerve signals. As the brain sends early electrical impulses through the spinal cord, the muscles respond, creating the first signs of physical activity. The baby begins to stretch, kick, and rotate within the amniotic fluid. This fluid plays a crucial role because it acts like a cushion, allowing safe movement without harm. It also helps the baby practice essential physical coordination. Every movement strengthens bones, joints, and muscles, preparing the body for life outside the womb. Even simple actions like opening and closing hands or turning the head are part of this development process. As weeks pass, these movements become stronger and more coordinated. The baby may respond to external stimuli such as sound, light, and even the mother's voice. This shows that the nervous system is becoming more advanced, allowing the brain to process signals and create responses. Reflex actions also begin to develop, such as sucking and grasping, which will be essential immediately after birth. The sense of touch becomes active as the baby explores its environment inside the womb. It may touch its face, hold the umbilical cord, or move away from pressure. These interactions help build sensory awareness and improve brain-body coordination. At this stage, the baby is not just growing physically, but also developing early behavioral patterns. Movement also plays a vital role in strengthening the cardiovascular and respiratory systems. As the baby moves, the heart pumps more efficiently, and the lungs begin practicing expansion movements even though they are not yet used for breathing air. These internal exercises are essential for survival after birth. By the later stages of pregnancy, movements become more noticeable and rhythmic. The mother can often feel kicks, stretches, and shifts in position. These movements follow a pattern of rest and activity, showing that the baby already has a developing sleep-wake cycle inside the womb. The combination of muscle growth, nerve development, and sensory awareness makes this stage one of the most active and dynamic phases of prenatal life, where the baby is constantly preparing for the transition into the outside world. As the pregnancy enters its final stage inside the womb, the baby undergoes one of the most important phases of development, focused on full growth, strengthening, and preparation for life outside the mother's body. During this period, all previously formed organs, muscles, and systems begin refining their functions, becoming more efficient and coordinated. The body is no longer just developing structures, it is now practicing survival. One of the most significant changes is the rapid increase in body weight and fat accumulation. This fat layer is essential because it helps regulate body temperature after birth and provides energy reserves. The skin, which was once thin and translucent, becomes smoother and more opaque as fat builds underneath. This transformation gives the baby a more rounded and fully developed appearance, similar to a newborn. The brain continues its rapid growth, forming billions of new neural connections. These connections are responsible for controlling reflexes, learning responses, and early memory formation. The brain also begins organizing sleep and wake cycles, meaning the baby starts spending time in active and resting states. These cycles are important because they prepare the nervous system for life outside the womb, where constant adaptation will be required. The lungs, although not yet used for breathing air, undergo crucial development. They produce a substance called surfactant, which helps the air sacs expand properly after birth. This is one of the final steps needed for independent breathing. At the same time, the respiratory muscles strengthen through practice movements inside the amniotic fluid, simulating breathing activity. The digestive system becomes more active as the baby swallows amniotic fluid, which helps the intestines mature and prepare for processing food after birth. Waste material begins to collect in the intestines, forming a substance called meconium, which will be the baby's first stool after delivery. The liver and kidneys also continue refining their functions, ensuring that waste processing and blood filtration systems are ready for life outside the womb. The bones harden further, replacing soft cartilage with stronger structures that can support movement and posture. The skull remains flexible to allow safe passage through the birth canal. But the rest of the skeletal system becomes more solid and stable. Muscles continue to strengthen through frequent movements, kicks, and stretches inside the limited space of the womb. Senses become highly developed during this stage. The baby can respond more clearly to sounds, especially the mother's voice, heartbeat, and external noises. Light perception also improves, allowing the baby to react to changes in brightness outside the womb. The sense of touch becomes more refined, and the baby often changes position in response to pressure or discomfort. As space inside the womb becomes tighter, movements may feel stronger but less frequent due to limited room. The baby usually settles into a head-down position, preparing for birth. This positioning is crucial for a safe and smooth delivery process. The body instinctively aligns itself in the most optimal way for entering the world. All systems, nervous, muscular, respiratory, and circulatory, work together in harmony, reaching a level of coordination that allows the baby to survive independently after birth. Every development in this final stage is focused on readiness, ensuring that the transition from the womb to the outside world happens with maximum strength and stability.